Would you like to make this beautiful bubble skirt for yourself? Then keep watching. My name is Iben, and in this video I'll show you how you can sew this trendy and stylish bubble skirt Beklaedt from Beklaedt. Let's sew something beautiful together. This skirt is actually quite simple. The outer layer is constructed of 6 identical panels of fabric. In addition, the skirt is fully lined, while a hidden facing helps to keep the waistband in place. The skirt closes with an invisible zipper at the side. You can buy the sewing pattern for the skirt on my website Beklaedt.com. The skirt should ideally be sewn in a fabric that can hold its shape so that the bubbled effect at the hem doesn't collapse. In this example, I've chosen to sew the skirt in a lightweight cotton denim in dark blue. The fabric has good structure and doesn't wrinkle too much. I bought the fabric at Stop Shop in Denmark. We'll also need lining. I'm using satin woven acetate lining in a charcoal grey color. You can use other types of lining, but the most important thing is that the lining has a smooth surface, so it lies nicely on the inside of the skirt. We'll also need an invisible zipper, 22 to 25 centimeters long. And of course, matching sewing thread. To sew in the invisible zipper, we'll need both a regular zipper foot and a presser foot specifically for invisible zippers. Finally, we'll need fusible interfacing for the waistband facing. Choose an interfacing suitable for waistbands, meaning it should be woven and medium weight. Lastly, we need a 2 cm wide fusible stay tape to stabilize the zipper. If you don't have stay tape, you can cut 2 strips from a woven lightweight interfacing. All pieces should be sewn together with a 1 cm seam allowance unless otherwise stated. The first step is to cut out the pattern pieces according to the cutting guide. Next, we need to add the stay tape onto the 2 skirt pieces where the zipper will be placed. Measure your zipper and cut 2 pieces of stay tape at least 3 cm longer than the zipper. Place the tape on the skirt along one side seam so the resin side faces the wrong side of the skirt. Press with the iron and do the same on the other side. Also, find the 2 waistband facings. Place them on the ironing board, wrong side facing up, and iron on the interfacing. Now we'll attach the zipper to the skirt. If you're unsure how to sew in an invisible zipper, I've made an extra video with more details and explanations that I recommend you to watch. I start by measuring the length of the top of the zipper. The top of the zipper should sit so that the zipper head is about 13 mm from the top edge of the skirt when we sew with a 1 cm seam allowance. As you can see, the top of my zipper is longer, so I place a pin to mark where the zipper should align with the top edge of the skirt. Place the zipper correctly along the opening of the skirt. We should now measure how long the opening of the skirt should be. From the bottom of the zipper, measure at least 2 cm up, ideally 3 cm, and place a pin. We'll stitch the side seam up to where the pin is. Stitch the side seam of the skirt with a 1 cm seam allowance. Remember to stop when you reach the pin we just placed. Finish by pressing the seam open. Open the zipper and pin it along one side of the skirt, right sides together. The zipper should be sewn in so that it aligns exactly with where the stitching from the side seam stops. I snip into the fabric to make a small notch in the seam allowance to mark this point, but it can also be marked with a pin, fabric marker or similar. Bring the pieces to the sewing machine. Switch to the zipper foot, which makes it easier to baste in the zipper, and remember to move the needle to the side. Baste the zipper in place. It doesn't matter too much where the seam is, as this won't be the final stitching. Stitch down to the pin that marks the start of the side seam. Here you can see what the stitching should look like from the back. We need to make sure the zipper is sewn symmetrically. So I transfer the point from one side to the other and pin the bottom of the zipper in place. Then the rest of the zipper can be pinned in place, right sides together, on the other side of the skirt opening. Again, remember that the zipper head should sit 13 mm from the top edge of the skirt. Sew the other side of the zipper in place. It's important to start at the top and sew down. Stop by the pin. Check that you are satisfied with the stitching, that the zipper lies neatly, and that everything aligns. Now we are ready to sew the final stitching with the invisible zipper foot. Again, I start at the top and sew as far down as I can get. The zipper coil or teeth are pushed upwards with your fingers, so they slide into the groove on the presser foot. Then switch to the other side and stitch down as far as possible. Pull the zipper head through the opening and voila! The zipper is sewn into the outer skirt. As you can see, there's a small fold here at the bottom. That's normal and I can accept it. The fold is so small that it can be pressed out with an iron. But if it were larger, I would unpick and redo the stitching. Now we'll sew the remaining skirt panels together along the side seams. Place two pieces on top of each other, right sides together, and pin. Sew them together and press the seam open with the iron. Do the same until you've joined 4 panels. These 4 panels are then sewn together with the pieces containing the zipper. Do exactly the same and then we've completed the outer skirt. Find the 2 waistband facings and place them on top of each other, right sides together, and pin them together by one of the short sides. Stitch this side together and press the seam open with your iron. Find the 2 lining pieces. As you can see, I've overlocked all the edges of the lining because I know it tends to fray. But strictly speaking, it's not necessary. Place the lining pieces right sides together and pin along one side seam. Stitch the side seam and press it open with your iron. Place the waistband facing on top of the lining and join the pieces so that the lower curved edge of the facing is aligned with the upper curved edge of the lining. Remember to match the side seams. Stitch the pieces together and press the seam allowance down towards the lining. Now we'll assemble the lining with the outer skirt. Place the lining on top of the outer skirt, right sides together, and pin the waistband facing to the outer skirt along the waistline. We also need to fix the open side of the lining. Measure how long the opening of the lining for the zipper should be. It should be the same length or slightly longer than the opening in the outer skirt. Place a pin. Then the rest of the side seam on the skirt can be pinned together. However, note that we need to make a gap along the middle of the lining's side seam, which we'll use later on to join the two skirt layers at the hem. This gap must be at least 20 cm long. Stitch the side seam of the lining, but remember to leave the gap in the middle of the seam open. Then stitch the last part of the side seam up towards the zipper. Next, sew the facing and outer skirt together along the waistline. Snip into the seam allowance along the facing without cutting through the stitching, of course. Press the seam allowance towards the facing. From the right side, top stitch a few millimeters from the edge to keep the seam allowance in place. Now we need to attach the lining to the zipper. It's important that the lining is sewn symmetrically to both sides of the zipper. Stitch the lining to the zipper with a stitch about 7 mm from the edge. Stitch as far down as you can. Do the same on the other side. Turn the pieces around so the right side faces outward. Here you can see how the finished zipper should look. Bring the skirt to the ironing board and press both the outer and inner sides neatly. Also press the side seam of the lining open, as well as the waistband facing. Now we'll make a gathering stitch along the lower edge of the outer skirt. Do this by making 2 parallel rows of stitching along the lower edge of the skirt. Stitch with a stitch length of 4 and don't backstitch at the start or end. The first row should be about 7 mm from the edge, the next about 5 mm from the edge. Start and stop at one side seam. Place a pin to mark the opposite side seam from where the gathering stitches begin. Pull at 2 bobbin threads at a time to gather the fabric. These gatherers are pulled into the skirt all the way over to the opposite side seam. Keep gathering until the length of the outer skirt matches the lining. Tie a knot on the thread. Repeat the process on the other side of the skirt until the 2 skirts fit together. Find the notches on the lining piece that should match the seams on the outer skirt. We can only stitch half of the skirt to half of the lining at a time. While the skirt is laying so the right side faces up, put your hand through the gap in the lining to get hold of both layers of the hem. Turn the pieces around so the right side of the lining faces the right side of the outer skirt. With a firm grip, pull the pieces out through the gap in the lining. Now pin the lining and outer skirt together from one side seam to the other. Stitch the pieces together. Start at one side seam and stop at the other. Turn the layers back into place so the right side of the skirt faces up again. Then repeat the process for the other side of the skirt. Stitch the pieces together. Here you can see how the skirt looks like when the pieces have been joined correctly together. Now close the gap in the lining by making a stitch as close to the edge as possible. The last thing we need to do is to make belt loops. Find the belt loop piece. Fold one long side 1 cm towards the wrong side and press with the iron. Then fold the other long side 1 cm towards the wrong side and press with the iron. Fold the piece in half and press again. Stitch the piece together a few millimeters from the folded edge. Make a similar stitch along the other side. Cut the piece into 6 smaller pieces, each 7 cm long. Each belt loop is placed on top of a seam. The top and bottom edges of the loop are folded 1 cm towards the wrong side and then sewn in place with a narrow zigzag stitch. The loop that sits on top of the zipper should be moved to the back of the skirt so it sits right next to the zipper. You decide whether it should be placed to the right or left side of the zipper. And then the skirt is actually finished. I hope you liked this video. Please give it a like, subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram at Beklaedt_sewing. Thank you so much for watching.